As guests move away from accepting bundled costs and begin performing a mental audit of their stay, hotels must shift from charging hidden fees to providing high-value, experience-driven inclusions. Today, we explore how to align guest perception with the commercial ROI by transforming standard amenities into memorable brand signatures in our session, Rethinking Resort Fees, Guest Perception, and Commercial ROI. You're watching the International Luxury Hotel Association webinar series. We unite a global ecosystem of over 1 million professionals to cut through the noise and architect the future of luxury hospitality. Today's session is brought to you by Snap Wellness. Now I'd like to hand the floor over to our moderator for today, Ryan Embree, host of The Sweet Spot, to introduce our expert panel and get us started.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ryan Embree. I am the host of the Sweet Spot podcast and VP here at Travel Media Group. I'd like to welcome everyone to the International Luxury Hotel Association's webinar on rethinking resort fees, guest perception, and commercial ROI. A really important subject right now. Today's webinar is brought to you by Snap Wellness. I have the privilege of hosting a powerhouse panel. Before I get to them today, we're going to discuss how operators are really rethinking what's included in resort fees, how guests interpret the value, and how those decisions impact satisfaction, marketing visibility, and overall revenue performance. So as mentioned, I have a powerhouse panel. I'm very excited to talk on this critical subject right now that is really something in hospitality that is starting to bubble up. So I will let everyone introduce themselves. Kristen, we'll start with you, then we'll go to Patrick, and Michael, you'll bring us home. So Kristen?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen McClellan, the founder and CEO of Snap Wellness. We are known for our booths that put your sunscreen on evenly in 10 seconds. So you walk up to them, you can select your SPF, and in just 10 seconds time, you're completely, but most importantly, evenly coated with sunscreen from head to toe. And we are definitely a vendor known to help with the resort fee, the perceived value of the resort fee, and really give guests a new opportunity to have sun safety so that they can experience everything that your property has to offer.
Patrick?
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick, Chief Commercial Officer at Viceroy Hotels and Resorts. Very delighted to be here. For those of you who don't know about Viceroy, we are a luxury lifestyle hotel management company with properties in the United States, in Mexico, in the Caribbean, and in Europe. And we are very busy growing the brand internationally right now and sort of really try to continue to be at the forefront of redefining what luxury hospitality is becoming. So moving away from stuffy opulence really to purely experience-driven luxury, and catering to guests who are very curious about learning new, exciting things when they're staying at our property.
Awesome. Michael?
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Johnstone. I'm the Resort General Manager of the Naturally Pacific Resort in Campbell River, located on Vancouver Island. This is the first of our brand, Naturally being the brand. It's the only resort of its level in this part of the island. Expansion plans are robust and exciting. We plan to expand the brand not only on Vancouver Island, but in British Columbia, throughout Canada, and then watch this space. Our expansion plans include this will always be the flagship, and we plan to go into full service and limited service hotels and resorts. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, very exciting. We've got a lot to cover. We're going to go right into it. I think each of you bring a really unique perspective. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation today on, again, such an important topic. I feel like the best place to start is really the evolution of the resort fee, right? It used to start with something that was just on our folio that maybe guests would dismiss, maybe ask about once in a while. Now guests are really actively evaluating the value of this, and it's actually having a real impact on revenue strategy as well. So Patrick, maybe we can start with you. How have you seen kind of this evolution of the resort fee within your portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, just speaking, I think on behalf of all hotels, when we're looking at how the resort fee has evolved, starting historically, I would say that the resort fees were a passive sort of bundled cost. I would look at them essentially as a non-commissionable tax that guests accepted totally against their will, right? And today we have kind of entered more like an a la carte era. Now guests, when they check in, they really perform a mental audit, on the value that they are getting from that. So if a guest if a guest gets a $50 resort fee that we charge them, they're really calculating like a cost to joy ratio. If those fees, like in the old days, just cover high-speed Wi-Fi and local calls, then obviously a guest perceives that $50 resort fee as a tax. That's why I call it a non-commissionable tax, because those are viewed as basic rights. It's like having Wi-Fi complimentary. It's kind of like brushing your teeth in the morning. So, but if that fee really covers great experiences, and great wellness activations, or a beachside concierge, or we will hear about a lot of great examples on this call, I'm sure, then it's really viewed as a value add, right? So, just three quick examples. Standard Wi-Fi, that's seen as a hidden tax. But if you upgrade that to premium content access, then you look at it as a value add, right? And the perception is that it's an upgrade. If it's just saying you include a fitness center access, like in the old days, again, it's a hidden tax for me. But if you say bespoke wellness experience, local hiking guides, access to Pelotons in the guest rooms or whatever it might be, then it's bespoke wellness, right? You're not paying just for a room, but you're paying for a lifestyle. And you can go into many examples. Bottled water can be seen as well as like a cheap amenity in plastic bottles, or you really use nice reusable carafes in glass, so that the guests feel like they're not getting nickel and dimed on things like that. So, but anyway, I'm sure we'll hear about a lot of great examples on how this has evolved, specifically from Michael, who's sitting at the forefront at his property.
Yeah, Michael, tell us a little bit about, from the resort side, you've got maybe a little bit closer ear to the ground at your resort to, these guests. What are they saying about the resort fee, and how have you maybe seen it evolve just in your experience?
Of course. So when I took over the resort, it's a new resort, but I took over, we were 4 or 5 months in from opening. And as Patrick so rightly said, the resort fee inclusions then were Wi-Fi and parking, and people were not happy. It was perceived as a gouge in top of our already sometimes high prices. So what me and my team did, we went full circle and looked at this subject matter, and I've actually got the lobby sign in front of me, because after this meeting, funny enough, me and my team are getting together to decide on summer 2026 resort fee amenities and services. So we looked at the resort, and we looked at our unique selling points, which are many. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We've got an extensive garden with the honeybees and fruit trees and a greenhouse. It's It feeds literally, excuse the pun, it feeds the hotel kitchens in the summer months. Lots of salad leaves, garlic, onions, soft fruits, honey, etc., etc. So we took that as an example and we included garden tours with our executive chef and head horticulturalist. And that was a wow. People loved that. They saw value opposed to essential inclusions. We wanted to add value. Other things we did, when we've got an extensive, beautiful golf course as part of the resort, so we chose a quiet corner and we made that a serene space, just with some chairs and some tables and just a quiet corner so people can go and read or just sit and watch nature and watch the golfers that play. And that's just other things that we did. We did a mini golf lessons for people that were non-golfers. We'd give them 15 minutes with a golf pro. We introduced a free luxury shuttle into town. Where I'm located, the taxi service is almost non-existent, and people were struggling to get from the resort into the town centre. So we're lucky to have a couple of a Cadillac and a high-end bus. So that's just some examples of how we re-looked at it. And interestingly, since we increased the resort fee and changed the way that we spoke about it and included some nice things, the complaints we got were reduced to almost nothing.
Incredible. And it, again, just shows kind of perspective and assigning value there, how powerful that can be and how it can just shift the mindset and the guest experience. Kristen, you're on the other side. I'm curious how the evolution of ownership's thought process around resort fees and looking at it as a revenue strategy, and even a way to gain trust and from our guests.
Oh, totally, 100%. I mean, we do get asked from a lot of our general managers, actually, like, what else do we see coming from the other side and what do we know, especially being in that wellness and longevity space. But I think a big part of it is for us looking at, the millennial travelers are coming in, they travel different and they look for different things where they want to maintain their everyday lifestyle, but at the same time, they want, I call them the things you can talk about, the things that you can talk about to your friends. So for us, we definitely concentrate on that. So as I said, like, we have a booth that you walk up to, select your SPF, put your sunscreen on in just 10 seconds. And so when our general managers are looking at us, for example, they're seeing, hey, this actually costs us, on a resort fee side of things, change per room, but what is the perceived value to our guests? And we've actually surveyed those guests I can only speak from our perspective, but the perceived value per application for us is $5 to $10. So when you're playing change per room to $5 to $10, that's a huge differential for our general managers, where the perceived value is so strong and more than that 2x that they're usually looking for in a resort fee kind of component. That is something that they pay attention to. On the flip side, how you said, looking at it as like a revenue generator and things like that, the big conversation around it too is that you should be offering things in your resort fee that help people spend elsewhere, or at least that's how we look at it. So from our perspective of looking at sun safety, we say, hey, it takes them 10 seconds to be sun safe. Complaints are coming in less because they are not getting sunburn on vacation. With us, they spend about 31% more in food and beverage spend outdoors because of it. And then on top of that, as I said, the things you can talk about, we're seeing a huge social media push and marketing spend push for the marketing departments that maybe they weren't seeing before organically, so that they don't need to spend on that. So we're looking at both ways for our GMs to save as well as push additional revenue on top of just creating more in that resort fee.
Yeah, I think that really fits the perfect niche for a resort fees. It's a win for the guests and also a win for the general manager, owner, and brand there. And it was interesting with Patrick what you brought up with that point about talking about how we start to do as guests this kind of audit, right? This audit of the resort's fees and
Right.
say, okay, what am I going to use? What am I not going to use? Is this worth it? Do I have to have that conversation with someone on Michael's team about this resort fee? Where do you think, how do you do that math in your head when you're looking at your resort fees and saying, I do think that this is going to cross the threshold of being a net positive versus maybe the guest looking at it and being like, well, this just does feel like a tax.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's really by looking at, the value at first, right? Guests really assign a higher value to specific inclusions that are based on their psychological utility, right? Like that mental calculation, that audit that I mentioned, of how much an item really reduces stress for them, how it saves time, or to Kristen's earlier point, like how it enhances their social status, right? Like the social media aspect of it, right? So it's not entirely about the cost of the inclusion item, I feel, as much as it's about the replacement cost, and the emotional relief for the guest that we can provide with those. So like I said, guests really perform like rapid mental comparisons when they look at an inclusion. They say, if I had to buy this myself right now, what would it cost? So as an example, if back to that $50 resort fee, that could include a shuttle to a restricted beach, that has high-end sunscreen stations and other things, a beach concierge included, right? So a guest then thinks, okay, getting from the hotel to that beach is probably going to cost me $20 each way, right? And then a bottle of luxury sunblock, that's another $30, and this and that. So in the guest's mind, the guest has already profited before they even hit the water at that beach, right? So that's how you create that perceived, I mean, not just perceived, real value for the guest,
Yeah.
by having the right inclusions for them and respecting that process that a guest goes through in their head when they analyze that. Um, a low value example, really the opposite of that, is the unlimited local phone calls, because nobody does that anymore. You
Sure.
do long distance on WhatsApp and local calls on your phone, So that's why that's like the worst path that you could choose.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that you bring up, Patrick, about it's not just the cost, the monetary cost, but also the cost of convenience, right? Michael's example of the shuttle, of being able to do that, that people would probably pay a premium to get, nowadays Ubers aren't as nice as they used to once be, and also having the convenience of it being right there at the hotel versus having to wait maybe 15 or 20 minutes or anything like that. So these costs way more than just those monetary costs. Are you seeing that over there at your resort, Michael?
Oh, totally. And by so we extended. I'm just looking at we've got 21. Last summer, we had 21 inclusions that people got to utilize for the resort fees. So by extending the inclusions, we're actually becoming more inclusive. So our take is, you don't want to use the complimentary fat bikes that we've got. That's fine. Come to the manager cocktail reception. So there's something that everybody can really dip into. Another thing that when we approached this, we did look at the costs, of course, because, my job ultimately is to make money. But, apart from a couple of things, they've got costs like the manager's cocktail reception. We do frozen treats in the lobby on a Friday for an hour in the afternoon. That costs, but most of the things were here anyway. So the garden tours, which was our most popular thing, that cost nothing.
Yeah.
That cost time for the chef and our head horticulturist to speak about it, which they're happy to do. The golf pro 15-minute starter, whatever you want to call it, golf lesson, that didn't cost me anything.
But it gained the trust and improved and enhanced the guest experience, which again, when we look for those kind of win-wins, uh, that's the perfect match.
It's also adding that wow factor that we wanted people to go, again, I'll go back to the garden because it is one of our big USPs. When people see that we've got beehives and we can speak about the volume of produce that it goes into the hotel kitchens. People are so interested in that. From a sustainability point of view, they're really interested. We compost a lot of stuff. People are interested in that. And it gives them, and speaking about social media, given the photo ops, I don't know how many photographs of me at the manager's reception are floating around the world a lot. So yeah, it's it's an interesting subject. And we also last summer we're doing the same this year as a nod to the local community. We took $1 from our resort fee and donated it to the local food bank. Now, it didn't cost me anything. It didn't take, nobody had to do anything. And it enabled us to donate almost $12,000 to the food bank. It
Wow.
didn't hurt my profit line at all. So there's different facets that we can utilize that fee for.
100%. And this kind of gets me into my next question here about, using these inclusions to reinforce your brand and also communicate care, right? And Kristen, you probably uncover this a lot, that if it's communicated properly through the teams at the property, it looks more than that you're just providing them with sunscreen, but you're actually caring about their well-being and wanting to, uh, and enjoy their experience, enjoy their vacation even longer and better.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely we've seen it's a lot more about care because the things and the items that they're looking for, like I think of them as like a little bit you're looking at like personal versus communal, but really it brings it back to that like word of experiential because they want to see that care to the guests. Like when someone looks at a resort fee and says, "Hey, what's included?" Oh, it's the lazy river that's always here. It's the water, and those kind of things. But to Michael's point, like the garden tours, while it's not costing him a lot, that's an experience that they can talk about. It's under the care bucket of both wellness as well as an experience they could say to their friends. So for us, yeah, it's a lot about that sunscreen. Yes, you need it while you're here. It's a necessity, it's an essential, but also like our tagline is experience more. And it's really about the component that if you wear your sunscreen, we make it easy and you don't get sunburned while you're here, then you will go to the spa because you'll get that massage because you don't have a sunburn, or you will go experience that garden tour because you'll stay outside a little bit longer. You'll, do the paddle boards. You'll come join us for all of these things because you're not in pain and something happened that kind of made you not experience everything. So for us, it's completely about care and creating that experience, but offering something that just helps them do that and maintain something they really want to do.
Yeah, and you get to skip the aloe at the local gift shop, as well.
Exactly.
That's gonna save you some money. So,
Yeah, totally. Skip the gallows.
and Kristen, I'm wondering, these hotels, are they, because one of the things that we've all talked about is the kind of social value that you get out of this too. If you have an inclusion that feels like a really authentic experience, that's hopefully is going to be shared, and you get to hopefully get that marketing, that free marketing via your guests, right? That's what we're always trying to achieve with social media. Are GMs, owners surprised when they see people utilizing that and sharing it on social media and it getting a lot of engagement and comments?
I mean, I always say yes and no because some of them come to me because they were the consumer of it on social media.
Gotcha.
Um, but for sure, the capacity of it for them, I mean, is I think more than I mean, I can put some numbers to it because it's more than what you really expect. Like for us, a good client example would be Evermore in Orlando. I mean, they have done this in an awesome way. Honestly, some of it just most of it all organically. And so the sunscreen booth, since it is experiential and people love taking pictures and then their friends like, and there's been a lot of virality around it for just their guests on a normal day. They have seen about, I want to say 190 million views on that content at this point and about 1.5 million shares, which those shares is really what is the valuable component. Those shares these days cost or of value to them is about $5 to $7 a piece. So if they were hiring influencers to come and stay there instead of this organically happening with their guests, that would cost them, $8 to $11 million to get that kind of traction. So when you're speaking to that, you're seeing the marketing departments and the GMs say, hey, something as simple as a sunscreen machine can get us some value. They're sharing it, and then they go through the comments. They see people saying like, "Wait, are you in Orlando? No, you're in the Caribbean? You're in Orlando? It looks like you're in the Caribbean. That's so cool, that bay behind you," and really hyping up the property and their other offerings, all because there was a sunscreen machine, right there on the beach. So for things like that, they really see the value, and because of that, then we do let them use the touch screen space on our machine to either promote the property or promote other offerings when someone is in the machine, because that is the most high value advertisement that they could have, because that's what's ending up online. So we're seeing a huge progression of social media, and even places like Evermore do use it as an ad now on social media because of people saying, "Where are you? What is that? That's so cool." So there are ways for them to do that, just by highlighting these amenities to get that same visual traction in their marketing departments.
Yeah, so when we look at, what the inclusions should be, specifically when we're, about to launch a new hotel, we're always looking at it through two different lenses, right? One is obviously, as we all spoke about, we want to create value for the customer first and foremost. But secondary to your question and to Kristen's examples, we always think about how do we create marketing value for the property, right? So when your resort fee includes something memorable, like a range of great experiences, then you kind of fulfilling both of those needs, right? Like just as an example, for our property at the Algarve in Portugal, beautiful countryside location, we have a resident beekeeper, and one of the experiences there that we're offering that guests can choose from is a honey making experience with the hotel's resident beekeeper. And obviously, that's something that everybody shares afterwards, and that's something that can easily become viral and gets reshared. In that case, the resort fee really helps to market the hotel by giving guests something that's worth sharing and talking about, right? Yeah, and there's a lot of examples like this. A lot of other hotels are doing it great as well. There's if you go to the Faena Hotel in Miami, you have that Damien Hirst gilded mammoth, that everyone has to take a photo with. So great for the property. These things go viral. Or more practical things, at our new property in Sun Valley that we're going to launch, we'll have these brightly colored, really cool Rivian in-house cars, that will bring you to our ski concierge at the slopes, or our stargazing tours with a resident astronomer. These are all things that get captured and get shared in the end of the day. So it really helps both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And creates that memorable, unique experience that right now travelers are craving more than ever. They want to feel like they're getting a one of a kind experience that they can't find anywhere else. So, Michael, you mentioned you're setting up for your summer inclusions. I'm curious when you go through a process like that, maybe give um, our audience here a little bit of background of like how do you measure success? Is there certain metrics you look at? we did this last summer and we got a lot of great feedback. Is it an actual number, or is it that kind of price cost ratio? What metrics do you use to see if something's successful and inclusion successful?
It's a difficult thing to measure because the way we've got a separate line that we record our resort fees, but the cost of certain things are F&B is just hidden in the F&B P&L. But the first thing we do is we look at and today's a great example. All my senior team is going to get together in a meeting room and we're just going to brainstorm new ideas. Some we're going to carry over, but I want some new, fresh ideas. But the first thing we ask ourselves is what fits with our brand? Our name is naturally natural is the brand that's the word that's going to thread through the brand development. So does it fit with that? Does it fit with our sustainability message? That's a big thing for us. And does it fit with our existing operations? So we would never do anything that's F&B heavy at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night because that's when all the restaurants and bars are at their busiest. So that's the way we look at it. The way we measure it is a simple things, guest feedback. So when, the front desk agents are renting out the city bikes, the fat bikes, if the guests have got something to say, good, bad, or indifferent, they log that and they feed that back. Online guest reviews are vitally important, and we noticed again last year when we reviewed the whole subject matter, people were commenting favorably on the things that they enjoyed. But also there's indirect things that we're doing that's adding value that's not necessarily directly under the banner of resort fees. And I'm going to give you an example. Is this year we are totally redoing our whole concierge service. So instead of having concierge stand in the lobby, just being a person standing there waiting for a guest to ask to book a local event or complain, we are redialing that whole thing to ensure that when that guest walks through the door, doesn't matter if it's the first time or the 10th time, that we've, as far as we can, tailored that guest's experience towards what their requirements are. And that can tie in with the resort fee inclusions. So by giving the guest a pre-arrival call, we find out that they're golfers. Okay, not only can we book them in a tea time, but we can speak about the resort inclusions that you might want to spruce up your short game, that type of thing.
Well, what you were talking about with that guest feedback, Michael, so important because I know we tend to, as hoteliers, sometimes don't like to see the bad. We only like to see the good, but that's a great way to see whether something's working. And even if we implement something where you have the bike example, for example, if there's no bikes available and people have that expectation now that they hear that this resort fee includes the bikes and there's none because they're all taken out, it actually could have a net negative experience on the guest experience. And that feedback's going to help kind of
It's an interesting point when you speak about the bikes. So we decided to include bikes. So I just went and bought a couple of bikes and all the safety. And I spoke to the store that I bought the bikes from, and I explained what I was doing. And I said, if this is popular, I'll be back in a couple of weeks to buy more. I didn't have to last year, but if I need to, you can buy 4 bikes. It's fine. If the demand is there, we'll supply that a service for sure.
Kristen, for you, what type of metrics seem to resonate the most with GMs and owners when it comes to what you provide? What kind of maybe opens their eyes a little bit and is like, oh, that's really vital or critical to my business?
I would say, yeah, it's a couple of things, and it's definitely shifted over time. I would say for us, maybe if you asked me 5 years ago, the number one thing was that 31% increase in food and beverage spend on the pool decks. So we were actually analyzing for them. We were comparing apples to apples. We were saying like sunscreen with the pumps versus our new age technology. And we were seeing that 31% increase in people who were always offering complimentary sunscreen, but it was a difference between the two. There is always a standard too that is just even getting them to that complimentary sunscreen. But I would say that 31% increase in food and beverage spend was probably the top that they were looking at. They wanted people outside, staying longer, being able to do those other experiences. And at that time, probably also the spa increase that they were seeing because people weren't sunburned. Um, but as you know, through the pandemic and people learning to spend time outside a little bit more and having a little bit more of personal experiences outdoors, I think there's been a little bit more of an interest there that we've seen. And that is really where also we saw that huge marketing social media push. I think I spend a lot of time talking about the value of those shares that hey, every share is worth $5 to $7. You should be noting that, thinking about it. How do you get organic traction there? Is definitely a huge one. And then also how you can create those digital advertising moments. I think that's a big one for us too. So like, as I said, there's a touch screen on our booth. So we talk a lot about how GM with my general managers, we talk a lot about digital messaging outdoors and how you maintain your luxury without putting signage certain places. And so having something that is multifaceted that they could use as digital messaging while also providing something and having that candid moment with a guest, I think that has become increasingly important since people are such digital humans now, even in the luxury space,
Oh yeah.
having that moment walking up to, a self-service technology where you may learn something else about this property and have that really, 30 seconds of attention, I guess, of like being able to say like, hey, here's what you should do next now that you're sun safe. I think that message is something we talk about a lot. Um, that has definitely become something that our general managers have looked to us to say, how is it best for me to use this space and what kind of interaction am I creating with my guests at that moment?
Yeah, I think in terms of measurability, a really good inclusion in a resort fee can be two things. It should be a strategic lever that, drives A, the P&L, and then B, the brand equity, right? That's like when it plays into social media, shareability, all of these things. And then people, you're creating great word of mouth with it, and it helps you to elevate the brand. So if you have a really good resort fee, it acts as a lead generator somehow for other outlets, as we had some examples here, like for us, we've seen that, if your fee, for example, includes a daily mezcal tasting at the right time, then we can measure the success of that by looking at cocktail or full bottle sales at our bars, within, let's say, the 60 to 120 minutes following that tasting, right? Is there any impact, So that helps us to evaluate it a little bit from a P&L perspective as well. Or spa, for example, is one where we could do the same thing, like if we have a complimentary, like a hyper vault recovery session at our spa as an inclusion, does that lead to a 15-20% increase in conversion rate for 60-minute massages, So if it does, then it's a successful inclusion in my eyes.
Yeah.
And I think your key word there is the right time, because I think that a lot of the discussion around these inclusions are almost curating a little bit of the movement of guests in the right places at the right times and having
Absolutely.
the inclusions help you move them to the right. Because we even see it simply with sunscreen, like where we put this machine so that they are in a location where we know they need to get to the beach, or we want to move them from the pool to the beach. So they need more sunscreen at this time and we're moving them that way. I think the key word there is with the inclusions, the right times, so that everyone is having that almost under curated movement to experience all these things that you're investing in for the property.
So fascinating to hear that and how these resort fees, I mean, we've got more data than ever before and how we can meticulously use these metrics to improve the guest experience. So I know I certainly will be looking at my resort fee completely different now. And if I don't have some sort of beekeeper experience, I'm going to be very upset. But well, thank you, everyone. Any final thoughts? We've covered a lot today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just got something to add that
Please.
I'm sure we're not unique in doing this. We use the resort fees as a bargaining tool. So the sales and marketing department are, you know, proficient if it's a group that's coming in that we know that they're going to be in conference between 9 and 5, and then they're off property for dinner or whatever the case may be. And we know they're not going to be using the resort facilities that much. Then we use that as a bargaining tool to win the business. And that's quite successful. So people see value in us sometimes removing or reducing the resort fee opposed to reducing a room rate because I want to protect my ADR.
Fantastic point there. And yeah, key to that is they have to see value in that, which that's what we're trying to do with the resort fee. You have to show value and then they perceive it as value. You can use it as a leverage tool. So to close, we'd like to thank all of you for joining the International Luxury Hotels Association webinar series. Thank you to Snap Wellness for making this webinar possible. And if you'd like to share the webinar, you will find it on ILHA's website, ilha.org, under events. Thank you again to the panel, and thank you to our audience for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.